All right, all right. Good evening. We are live. Another edition of Rompiendo Esquemas podcast. And we're switching it up a little bit tonight because we are going to be transitioning a lot more to English by kind of popular request. But honestly, that's the whole objective and goal of the podcast from day one is just to touch lives and to have conversations that you don't necessarily hear in an outer. And some people, have those questions. And you may visit a church and you may go home and still have these questions with you. Or you might have had experiences in the past and, have these things still in your mind. And so we want to create a free space. This is not rehearsed. This is not practiced. This is not something that we've kind of planned. This is how we're gonna go. This is the agenda. There's no agenda here, right? Like we're just here to share content that we felt that in our hearts from God we've been touched to share, right? And so we're gonna talk about a bunch of different things. But before I get too ahead of myself, I have a good friend of mine that I've known for a very long time. This guy's actually like a brother to me, and so his name is Kristian. We haven't talked in a while physically or over the phone. It's all like this virtual world text. So we've done a lot of that, catching up in the past couple months. But hey, man, we're live. Kristian, I appreciate you joining. How you doing, man?
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. I think I got disconnected.
Yeah. No, all good, man. I just said, how you doing? How's everything?
Doing good, man. Just living a day at a time and doing my thing, enjoying what's positive about being in Florida, the weather, right?
Yeah, that's the difference between you and me, right? I have this jacket on, and you have no need,
Yeah.
because it's probably in the 70s or the 80s, man. So hey, I appreciate you joining me tonight. Like I said, I have a bunch of people through inbox kind of ask me questions, and so for those of you who are viewing out there, there's gonna be in English, right? There's gonna be a couple times where I might swap it back and forth. Sorry, because I know the audience is bilingual out there, but we did have a couple people ask me questions. Hey, when are we gonna do a English pod? And so that's what we are doing tonight. And Kristian, I want to dive right into it because I think it's going to be an
hmm
impactful conversation. A lot of these things, not only
Sure.
with the Jehovah Witness religion, but so many different religions out there, right? You think about why do people make the decision to go from one place to another, right? Or it's like a job, right? Why do people make the decision to leave a job to
Sorry,
go
I'm
to
not
another
hearing you.
job?
It's like really like the connection is lagging.
The connection is bad. Can you hear me now?
I'm hearing you. You're breaking up.
Okay. Since it's breaking up, how do we? Let me see. Technical difficulties. My apologies,
Sorry about that.
guys. No, all
I don't
good.
know what's going on. I feel like
It sounds good in
I
the
was hearing you just
live.
fine before you started, but I don't know.
Yeah, it sounds good on the live, right? Yeah, we tested it and it sounds good there. I don't know. Let me see. Let me check it out. Let me see if there's something we got to fix here. Bear with us, guys. I promise you guys the conversation is going to be worth it, but we got to get through these technical difficulties here and figure this thing out. So, let me see. Let me see. Difficulties here. Figure okay. This thing out. So. All right. So it is. I think it's so. Kristian, you're connected to the Wi-Fi, right? Because I think it might be the connection out there. Because the phone here, the live is good. Um, and then on the and everybody can hear us. We just confirmed. Are
I
you?
just I just jumped off of Wi-Fi in case it was me. So
Can you hear me better?
I hear you. I hear you good right now,
Okay. Perfect.
for sure.
All right. Cool. So yes, some technical difficulties, guys. But as you know, this is a cappella. So that's just how this works, right? There's some things we're gonna tweak and fix as we go along. But I wanted to jump right into it, man. Obviously there are many religions out there, right? And so when people make the decision to go from one to another, or right, like even if you think about it from the context of a job, when you make the decision to switch jobs, careers, right, go from one employer to another, like usually there has to be something that happens, right? Like you don't just wake up if you're happy working somewhere and say, you know what, I'm in Google, but now I want to go work for, I don't know, Facebook. I want to go work for, another employer that's, virtual or whatever the case may be, right? Like we don't just make those decisions. So, tonight I want you to first walk us through a little bit of your history. Like, how did you get into, following and believing in what we know as Jehovah Witness? What is it all about? What called your attention? How did you get started? And then we'll take it from there.
Yeah. I mean, changes in life, right? I mean, they're just like, you're right. Not a lot of times are they self-provoked in the sense like, or just like leaving a job, going for another one is not, typically is because something's happened and they need to find a way to get another job or figure a different trade out, or it's usually something that prompts that. But yeah, I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses, is a religion that I grew up in. So, like all of my life, I most people in the religion, they have terminology, right? They will call it the truth, right? And that's the terminology that they use. And whenever someone is born and raised in the religion, it's called being born and raised in the truth. And that's pretty much the term. There's terminology that they use. And yeah, I was raised as a kid going to, they don't call them churches, they call them kingdom halls. And we would go to the kingdom hall every Sunday. There would be a weekly meeting, depending on your congregation. That changes. It could be Wednesday, Thursday. Typically, those were the popular days. Um, so there's one midweek meeting, and then there's the Sunday meeting, which is where they study the Watchtower, which everyone is very familiar with. The Watchtower magazine that Jehovah's Witnesses knock on the doors and show. So yeah, but I grew up in it. It's all that I knew for a long time.
Yeah. I know we had a lot of conversations about that in the past, right? And when we were younger, and just some background and some context to the conversation, I've known Kristian since he was about 19, 20 years old. So a different character back then than now. So, obviously, you were dead set on, as you mentioned, right? I think that word is so appropriate to talk about what and then elaborate on what we're going to talk about tonight, which is, like you were so dead set, this is the truth, right? That was like your terminology. That was anything that, anybody would try to speak to you otherwise. It was like, this is it. So what was it that called your attention at that time about it? Like why did you for so long believe that you were being taught the truth, that what you were hearing was innately the truth and what you wanted to follow? Like, what was it?
Really, what it was, and what they are what the Watchtower organization is very keen on teaching is all the intricate natures of the truth, all aspects, right? So everything, every little thing, they were very focused on getting it right. And that's something that resonated with me, right? That's something that resonated with me because I thought that there were so many differences out in the world of Christianity, many denominations, many opinions, you know what I mean? And it's the single religion with the most denominations in the world.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at Muslims, they're just all Muslim. There's no denominations of of Islam, right? There's no denominations of Hinduism. All of these things are, just dead set the way that they are. And Christianity has the most denominations and splits ever. You know what I mean? And for good reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's in itself something to teach, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
somebody's trying to confuse things. But yeah, there's so many denominations and all teach different things. And I what attracted me so much was their zeal for the truth.
That's a strong
Their
one.
zeal for the truth. And yeah, that's what really got me into it, looking up things, dates. They're very focused on dates. They're very focused on a lot of things. And, you know, to me at that time,
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
study, and it's still, and even at this time, that study is very, it's very sought after,
Sure.
the type of studying that they do,
Mm-hmm.
the type
Mm-hmm.
of effort that they put in the ministry, right? It's something that's sought after by a lot of Christians, and it's something admirable. But
Yes.
that doesn't mean that everything they do is right.
Yeah.
So,
Hey, and listen, man. I think you threw you threw a lot on the table there. So that was good, and I didn't really know what piece to pick up and kind of start that puzzle. But like when I think about Christianity and the denominations and all the breakdowns that we like to give, right?
mhm.
I think it brings more confusion at times when we start trying to put labels, right? You put labels on what right looks like, right?
Right.
This is what right looks like. This is how it's supposed to go. And so we've brought this fear to the Christian community as a whole that, especially by the denominational leaders that would say, hey, if you don't follow us, if you don't follow this, if you don't follow this approach, this is the way and the only way. And if you don't do it this way, it's like that lost or saved or heaven or hell for some religions. And it's so different, right? Kind of what the consequence is. And some people follow whatever that truth is based on the consequence, not on the relationship, right? So, like, if you don't build a relationship with Christ, with God, if you don't build a relationship with whatever that entity is that you believe in, then you are just following based on fear. And leadership that's based on fear has never been good leadership, even in the secular world, right? Like, that's not good leadership. What kind of
Right.
leader, and for all of you viewers out there, right? Feel free to throw some stuff in the comments here, whether on YouTube or Facebook Live. Like, how many of you want to follow a leader that leads you based on fear, right? That, oh, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. You lose your job. I'll lower your pay, and or else, right? Like,
Mhm.
that statement doesn't really resonate well nowadays. And I think religion, sometimes we try to remove from that equation. And the biggest influence is fear, right? In religion. And so I wanna move it along a little bit. And I wanna ask you, what was that moment, right? And honestly, for me, even if it was in this more public setting, I wanted to ask you that. Like, what was that defining moment where you have that aha moment and said, man, this ain't it. This is not the truth. The, there's more to this than I've been told, right? Like, what was it?
Like, I wish I could say that there was just one thing that right away threw me off the edge, right, of creating doubt. But I'd like to say that I was baptized. Believe it or not, I grew up in the religion, but I was baptized as one of Jehovah's Witnesses in 2018, which is not too long ago. So, was it 18, 19, 20, 21, 23? Yeah, like 5 years ago.
Wow. Yeah.
Was like 5 years ago I was actually baptized into the religion. So I grew up in it, learned about it, understood, studied all the time, every day. Once, twice a week, I would study with my uncles and a lot of people that were in it with me. I wasn't the only one. The reason why I grew up in it was because my grandmother was Jehovah's Witness. My uncles are Jehovah's Witness. A lot of my family actually are Jehovah's Witness. So I was kind of brought into it because of them. And now growing up, I got to experience the world. I left for a little bit. I experienced the world as an adult for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I realized that the world, although being Jehovah's Witness, the world is still very wicked. You know what I
Sure.
mean? And although Jehovah's Witnesses may not be right about a lot of things, they still maintain a sort of peace and godly morality that I just did not see in the world. So I returned because I felt like it was hopeless to be happy without God,
Mm.
and I returned. And um, then that's when I got baptized around 2018. Still there for a couple of years. Was married. Um, Me and my wife. both became Jehovah's Witnesses and got baptized together. And then doubt started to creep in. So it was a slow process, believe it or not, because knowing you, and you know me well, right? I was very, very keen on studying myself for a lot of
Yes.
things, and doing my own personal study without bias is something I always tried to do. But remember, I grew up in a religion where all I was taught was one side of the coin.
Sure.
And trust me, I had a lot of friends, and I've grown to have a lot of friends that have the opposite side of the coin, of the Christianity coin, right? So you have two sides, and I got enough of both perspectives to kind of peak. I always was very, very strong on defending the Jehovah's Witness belief, and that's how it starts, right? They call it apologetics.
Yes.
Is defending your faith, and I got really deep into apologetics for Jehovah's Witness theology, and held strong with a lot throughout most of that time. And there's just a few things, small things that can't be defended. And as I do more research on it, I was finding no answers. And eventually, my son was born in the year 2020, March 13th, 2 days before the pandemic, by the way, crazy. And before the lockdowns, I should say.
Yep.
And that was the day where my curiosity, or not curiosity, but my doubt peaked. And there was a scare that I had in the hospital where my son, they scraped him when they were taking him out on his arm. He still has a scar there.
Yeah.
And also my wife, she had a C-section. She didn't have a natural birth.
Sure.
So I looked to my right and I saw a big bucket filled with blood. And I had no idea how to feel. And I was wondering if she was losing too much blood. And I thought in my mind, that's one of the biggest issues of the Jehovah's Witness theology, is the blood issue. And for those of you who don't know,
Yeah.
they have a doctrine that is against blood transfusions or ingestion of the blood of any kind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that can create a big issue. When my son was born, I thought, and my wife was there with a lot of blood lost, I said, if they ask me for a blood transfusion for my son, there's no question. There's no question. And I realized that because they say that you don't know what it's like to have kids until your son or daughter is born.
Yeah.
And it's the very moment where the instincts kick in. And you realize this does not feel right, to say no to something that, like that. That's where my doubt peaked. And eventually I started finding flaws and gaps in a lot of the things that were taught. And that's what happened. And eventually I realized that the leadership that's in the Watchtower organization, although they have a lot of things that I still believe are correct.
Sure. Absolutely.
There's still the most important pieces that people are being condemned for in that organization are dogmatic. They're nothing but dogma. Things that are man-made rules that have no real scriptural basis. So
yeah,
I realized I disagreed with those things. And the thing is, if you disagree with anything that the leadership says, you can't be part of them. You have to agree with everything.
Yeah. Wow. I think I do remember that moment when you were talking to me about how difficult that decision was. And, at that time, even joking around, I asked you the question, hey, what if, your wife or your son needed, any of the medical procedures, if there's any more, right? Because I'm not too versed, but that they kind of limit based on beliefs, right? What if you had to? Would you? And I still remember, you didn't really have an answer like now. So it's pretty incredible to hear kind of where you've gone with your thought process starting there, right? And you said something that I think for the viewers out there, anybody that's connected or that's going to see this in a little bit, or whenever you get the opportunity to watch this, is that not every religion has it right all the way through, right? And so, it's important to understand, and this is gonna sound for those knee deep Christians that are, just that they're so holy that they glow when they come out their house, right? So for all of you guys that are glowing when you come out your house that have never sinned, right? Like you will, that you think you're gonna sit next to Jesus, right? On that day, like for all of you, I'm going to apologize beforehand, before I share what I'm about to share, because I'm about to offend some people out there with what I'm about to say. But even the Muslims, there's things in the Muslim religion that they got it right. You know who Allah is?
Mm-hmm.
That, like, a lot of people hear that, right? And oh my, Allah, what are you? Don't know. You can't. You know what that represents? What that translates to? Have you ever dived into a Greek Arabic translation of some of the things you read in the Bible? Do you know that some of the things have been modified to help people digest the content? And the word of God might say something completely different than what you've been reading. And you'll get so stuck in your ways that you believe that you're right and everything else must be wrong. And so what we do is, and what we cause, is church hurt and church trauma, right? People that won't go to any institution, that won't believe in any spiritual leader because they've been taught that nothing, if they don't do everything the way that they're told to do in that institution, in that religion, in that building, from that leadership, that they're in the wrong, that they're in sin, that they're in disobedience. And that's the part that I want you to dive into next a little bit, right? That kind of carries me over to my next topic. From what me and you have conversated in the past, you are right now living in disobedience based on, everything that they've taught you, right? Or that they expect you to follow. How has this walk been after you left, walking in what your previous leadership will call disobedience? What does this look like in your life right now? And what has it been like, man? Go into that a little bit.
Liberating for sure. For sure. It's a liberating feeling. It's a weight off of my shoulders. It's a lot of things, they're a group that has a lot of, invisible pressure. And when I say invisible pressure, I mean like the type of pressure that is given, that is assumed in without necessarily telling you.
Mm.
And there was a lot of responsibilities for church members, right? Or part of the congregation. They're called publishers. A publisher is just like an average, like it's like the lowest rank you could be, which is just like standard believer, right? Mm-hmm. We call it believers, right? They call it publishers. A publisher is someone who is supposed to be preaching the good news, the gospel. Mm-hmm. That's also terminology they change, right? They change it from gospel to good news. I mean, it means the same thing, but I guess they just want to be different. But the good news and teaching the good news door to door is a publisher. Okay, back then, which just recently changed. What I'm about to say just recently changed in something called the annual meeting this year, but I'll go into that in a second. But they would have you document your hours in the ministry. So they would have,
you punch in.
They would have you document. Yeah, pretty much. You clock in, and then you clock out at the end of the day. You write it down, how many hours you did, how many placements you've had of magazines, how many Bible studies you've conducted in a week. They have you document all that, and you give it in. And pretty much there is an invisible threshold that nobody really talks about, but that exists, where if you're below a certain amount of hours, you're considered inactive Christian. So an inactive publisher per se. And, it kind of makes people feel like there's many ways to witness at the end of the day. We know this. Right now we're witnessing.
Yeah.
We're witnessing. We're on here and we're talking about, our faith in Christ and in God and
careful, you got people getting seizures right now hearing that. Keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's true though, and we're preaching to people. But it has to be, for them, it's very specific, and they're very controlling on what kind of preaching work you do, in the sense that it has to be one of their authorized methods in order for it to count. It has to be door to door, has to be cart witnessing. Have you ever seen Jehovah's Witnesses standing in front of a cart with the documentation, with the Bible, and they're sitting there in populated areas like airports? That's called cart witnessing.
Supermarkets too, right? Like I've seen it outside of like
Supermarkets.
Walmart. Okay, got you. Okay.
Yes, yes. So they'll go, Times Square, if you live in New York, like they'll go to the populated areas with the carts, stand there, wait till somebody comes up and asks questions. They're not very salesy. They're not like salespeople. They don't stop you to try to teach you. They only want to teach the people that come to want to learn, which is, that's cool too. But it's just a method that they approve of. But if I'm doing this online, which I have done while I was still a part of them, you get criticized. You get criticized, and you get told that that it's not the right way to teach, and it's not the way that the Watchtower organization wants us to do it. So you have these hours that you count up.